So welcome back. So today we will walk you through some of the stuff which are required for programming. So when an error occurs, how do you handle that? How do you take user input from the command prompt? And there is a concept of module. That means if you do use frequent things like addition, deletion, all these things, instead of declaring that function and again, what you can do, you can basically build a module and call it from your uh, file. Okay, so we'll see how we can do that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you that in a Visual Studio Code which I have already created. So let me just open that, and you can see that Visual Studio Code, and the file name is 21 December 2021, just to indicate that this is the day I'm working today, so I can just run it. So I can say py 21. There is nothing, so it won't show anything at all. So it's blank. That's okay. Now we will start with error. Now let's understand what an error is. An error is something when you have some problem with your thing. So typical example. Okay, so let's say I want to do division with 0. In programming language, we can't divide a number by 0. In mathematics, the result is infinite. Okay, so if you do, let's say 100 divided by this sign is divided by 0, the result is 100. So if you try to do this, just this one, okay, nothing much, you probably will get an error. Okay, and that's the exception, we call it in programming language, or error you can call it. And it says that division by 0 is the error here. So you can't really divide any number with 0. Okay, you will get an error. Now there are ways by which you can control this behavior. So one of the ways is that you use variables. So you say this is 100, B is 10, and C is the result, which is A by B. Okay, and if I try to print whatever that output is, so I say C, it will still give me an error because I'm trying to divide it by 0. So to avoid this problem, we can put a condition like if, when we know that there is a possibility that B can be 0. So if B equals 0, okay, and that means the B is 0, then I can just leave it like that. I say print you cannot divide by 0. Okay, let me hide this part. And then if B is not equal to 0, then do the calculation. Okay, so I'm catching what is possible error. Possibly there could be an error here, right? So I'm just trying to catch that, and then if I run this, saying C is not defined, so let's say I say C equal to 0, so I'm unable to print C because C is unidentifiable. So let me just run it. So you can see that there is no error, but it is giving me a message which is I have written. Okay, so it is basically coming over here and then printing this error message. So this is my error message, so which is absolutely fine because that's what I wanted. So I wanted to print my error message. So you can see that now whatever I'm doing is fine, but let me just put it inside a function. Let's say I say def div and then a comma b. Okay, that's a definition of my function. I put it over here and I just indent them to make sure that they are part of this function. So I'm doing pretty much the same thing. over here inside the function and printing that out inside the function. So the function ends here. Just to indicate that the function ends here. Okay. What I now wanted to do is that I wanted to call this function with multiple different combination. So I want to divide 10 by 2, and I want to divide, let's say, 10 by 5, 10 by 0, 10 by 3. Okay. Now what will happen over here is that it'll tell me the output here. It'll come over here and show me the error message, and then it'll come over here and then also show me the result. So the yeah, that's correct. Thank you. So I will remove that. Thanks for pointing that out. And now let me run that. You can see that now I'm getting output. Okay, that's exactly I wanted to have, right? What if I do not have this kind of check and I simply have this result printed? Now, in those cases, we call it unknown error. We don't know, or we never identified that there could be an error. So it worked for first two. Okay, you can see that 5.0 and 2.0 are coming, but it failed here and it gave me an error. And the problem is that I am unable to also get the result for this one. There is no error with this line, but since there was an error, it got terminated. So the program got terminated. So it kind of did not work after that. To avoid this kind of scenario, when you have unknown error, and unknown error could be anything, right? Because when you accept people entering values, there could be an unknown error, right? You can handle that either inside this function. Let's say I want to handle it here. So we did it with if else, but this was very specific because we knew that if there is a value like 0 for B, then there could be an error. But let's say we don't know this, there could be an error. So we wrap them around called try catch block. The try catch block says, the try exception block, we call it sometime exception. Try exception block says that you try to do something, and if it is okay, let's go ahead with that. Or else you print here. Let's print there is an error. Okay. We don't know yet. We can print the exact error by printing the error message, but let's print the value of C inside the try block. So when it is successful, it'll print the value of C, else it'll say that there is an error. Now, this is also another way to catch something which is unknown. When I don't know that what could be an error, it could be due to 0, it could be anything of that sort. So I simply do a try catch. So even if there is an exception or error in the system, it'll still be handled in a generic way, and it'll execute the next one, that is divide by 3, which is a longer number with dot 33333, so on and so forth. So you can see that now I'm having sort of like a controlled behavior, right? Because when you expect user to enter value, user can enter any value. You really don't have any control over that. Now what you need to control is how you write the code to handle those kind of things. Okay, so for example, you allow only a positive number. Okay, so if somebody tries to enter something less than 1 or equal to 0, you have to check that. That's fine. But then you have to check other things also. There could be an error because of something else we don't know yet. So when we are not quite sure, we use try and except. But when we are sure, like divide by 0 is not allowed, we must handle that explicitly by saying that, hey, there I will not allow the system to do a calculation which will allow you to divide it by 0. Okay, so you basically have that kind of thing in place. Now coming to this commenting code, you might have seen me doing this commenting, right? So I've been making the comments. For example, I want to comment this line. So what I say in Python, I can say hash and then the line. That will present in the file. You don't need to delete the line. It will be present in the file, but it will simply not get executed. So if you run this code now, you'll find that it will give you this 3 lines output because this error line is kind of commented. Benefit is that you don't have to, if you, let's say later point in time need this, you can simply uncomment it. Okay, so this is how you uncomment, by just removing that hash sign. So it can be a code, it can be a little bit of documentation also. So documentation means, like sometime you'll find people put their name and date and the purpose of the code. So you can do a little formatting like this. So that's oftentimes is desired in the source code. This is an example of how we can handle error. Okay, and then say developed on 21 December 2021. So you can say these kind of things in that, and then contact a@a.com. So whatever the email address. So you can put this kind of thing on top of your file, which will be like a little bit of note, huh? Something like your exercise book, on top of which you can put a level, right? So it says what is the subject, what is the name, per class, section, roll number, etc., and the school. So all this level kind of thing you can put. So if I am seeing this file, I know what this purpose of this file is without reading the whole file, and this is sort of like a headline for your file. So a lot of time when you write program or see others program, it is very helpful. Okay, so that also is something for which you can use this commenting feature. So commenting is not about just about code, but also something which is not exactly the code. Because for example, I have put a line here intentionally to identify the difference between the function or the definition, what we learned yesterday, and the actual calling of that definition. So I just use this. You can even use something like a multi-line thing. So for example, I want to say that I am trying to call this function with multiple combinations. Let's say, let us play with 10 comma 0, 10 comma 2, 10 comma 5, 10 comma 0. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to put a multi-line comment, right? But you can see that if I have to do this commenting, what I need to do is that I need to put hash before every line. Okay, this sometimes is tedious. Okay, so assume that you have this kind of behavior. Now what you can do, you can put 3 double quotes. If you put a 3 double quotes, then it allows you to only enter the 3 double quotes when you are done with the multi-line. Now this has to be continuous, which means that you cannot have a code in between. If you have a code in between, then you have to break it. But otherwise, you see that if you have multi-line, sometimes you break the line for better readability because of the screen size, right? So you can put a multi-line quickly by adding these 3 double quotes at the beginning and 3 double quotes at the end. So this is about multi-line comment. Okay, so you can also put it like this, just in case you want to make it better readable. So you can have 3 dots, 3 quotes, double quotes, and start and end. Okay, so that is something which we need to probably use quite frequently. Now let's use this divide function, okay, and call this function, let's say, one by one by taking some input. Now we will not hard code the values, but we'll ask user to enter the value of A and B. Okay, so what we'll say that I will ask people to enter the value of A. So if I say something like this, enter the value of A. Now by entering the value of A, you can also use a variable called A or X or D or E, anything, but that's something which will be the A. How you say that? You assign the value, but you use a function called input. Now what it will show in the prompt as this. So you can put a colon, and this will be visible for the end user. Okay, and then I'll say enter the value of B, and this one is. Now your output will be A comma B. So whatever the value you are getting. Now just to avoid the confusion, you can say X and Y also. That's also fine. Okay, so you can just get 2 values X and Y and pass them the values inside the function and get the result. Now how that will behave. So let's see. If I run this, it will just wait for me to enter the value. Now this is where I will enter something like 10. And then for B also it will wait. And then I enter 2. And then it says that there is an error. Haha. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, correct. You are right. So why there is an error? So the error is because the value we are entering, right, or getting, they are of type string, and I'll show you the type. So let's just show you what we are getting. So if let's say we consider only X, and if I just print the value of X, that is type of X, so that will give you 10 2. It is type string. Okay, so a string cannot be used for mathematical calculation. So what is the way to do that? Is to convert it into an integer. Okay, how do you convert a string type to an integer? You say int. So there is a function called int and wrap the value. Okay, what happens now? The whole input will be wrapped as an int. So I can convert that value into int. I can do it later also while passing it, or I can do it here. So if I, let's say, make it fairly simple, and then when I call this divide function, I just need to call this int of x, int of y. If I say so, then it will be converted and then it will be handled. Now if I just hide this line and run it one more time, I say 10 and I say 5. And you can see the output is coming as 2.0. So you are right that when you have a string, you can't really use it for a mathematical calculation. That's why you see an error, because we have used try catch. So it did not throw an error, but it just gave me the error message. So I said that there could be unhandled errors. So this is one of the unhandled errors, because we had to check that whether this type is not string. We did not check it. So we needed another if condition. Now let's say somebody is passing date time. We need to put another if condition. So how many if condition do you put inside this mathematical calculation? It will be too much complex. Now instead of that, you can use try catch. So whatever that error is, when it cannot do a divide, just simply throw the error. So we are getting the error here. Okay, so that's what the whole intent here, to have a try catch. So we never imagined that it could be an error, but because we use try catch and except, it actually caught the error. So that was really helpful, because you are safe, it's not breaking, your function is not breaking. So you can actually call it again and again. So let's say I say while I less than 4, so I'll call it 4 times. So I use the while loop and I call this 4 times, and then I say this, and I say I plus plus. Okay, so what happens here, let's see. I has to be defined. Value of 10 to the result is 5. It'll ask again 10 5, result is 2.0. It'll ask again 10 0, there is an error, and it came out because there was a problem here. No, because I said 4, so it went up to 3. So if I needed to, let's say, consider 4, I can use this. And if I say CLS, and for the first time only I put a wrong thing, that is 10 0, it is showing me an error, but it is prompting me for another calculation. So I keep doing the calculation till the time the while loop allows me to do that. So I can say 10 7. So you see that I went into 4 times doing the same division calculation, and it kept asking me. And it will keep asking me if I say while true and run this. You see that I run 10 2 10 3 10 4 10 5 10 6. So it'll keep doing it, so there is no end to it. So when you need these things to happen, you can keep doing it. If you, let's say, enter something like exit, it will be exited. So you might have seen in the Python command prompt that um, there is a way to exit. You can type exit and it'll be exited. So you can do these things over here. So let's try to show you that. So I'll say print, that's an instruction thing. So I'll say this, a little bit of beautification. Okay, so oftentimes you find this. So I say print, and I say print the cal type exit to end the calculation. Now there is a problem. I have a single quote inside, so I'll wrap it around with double quote. So that will work. So what I'm asking people is to enter exit, and if they enter exit, it will be exited when in whichever x or y. So if I say if x equals exit, or sorry, you need this. I say break. If I say y equals exit break, that means in whichever input for A or B you type exit, it'll be ended. Okay, so let's see. Now if I run this, it'll have a nice command prompt, type exit to end the calculation. So I am happy to do the calculation. So 10 2, it's fine. So 10 5, sorry 5, and it's fine, and I'm done with that. So I'll say simply exit. It'll still ask me to enter the value of B because that's the next input. So whichever the value I am entering, it'll exit. So if I don't have to, let's say, do this, I can just do it here. So the moment I have entered X or Y as exit, it'll be exited. So let me just show you again. So you realize that, right? So if I say exit now, it'll just end the whole thing. Okay, so it's gracefully out of that thing. So you can actually control this user input behavior by providing this kind of interactivity, and that's what you have seen in the Python command prompt. So if you just simply say Python, that's what we call REPL, and you can see that it is just over here, and I say exit, and it gives me a message saying that either you type this or you say Control Z to come out. So if I say Control Z, it'll and enter, and it'll also come out. So by following the instruction printed in the screen, you take a decision. So that is very helpful because this way you don't have to remember the whole thing. So you can see that how easy it is to really tell people what they need to do rather than asking them to remember the whole lot of things. So that's about user input, and this is very helpful in interactive programming. So you can ask for what is your name and then print that name, and you just print it out. Now assume that this is a division code, right? Division code. So let me pick it up, and I create a file called div.py. Okay, that's, and then I save it here over here. So I put the whole thing in a separate file. Okay, and all my calculation is being called from the other file, that is 21 December, exactly as is. Now you can see that it is not recognizing this div function anymore because it could not find the definition of this function in the file. Now, how do I make sure that it identifies that? So I will say, now I'll just give a different name just to avoid the confusion. Let me rename it. I say calculator. Give the name of the file as calculator. The function is division. Okay. Now if I come back over here, I need to call this thing. So it is still not recognized. So if you just try to run this, let's say you try to run this 10 2, it said div is not defined. It's unable to find the div anymore because it's not present here. It is present in some other file. So how do you call this thing? We call it as a module. So if you have, let's say, a pure calculation like this, you can separate it from the actual program and make it simple. Okay, so you just put it in a different file. So it's sort of like organizing things. So if, for example, in school, we don't use one notebook to do everything. So we have separate notebooks. So we keep separate notebook whenever we need. We just refer that notebook. So for example, if you are studying a mathematics today and you want to refer something from your science notebook, so you bring in that science notebook. So you don't write everything together. It'll be a big one, right? It'll be later point in time at the end of the year quite unmanageable. So if I say import, sorry, import, and then I just say calculator. Okay, because I have a file called calculator.py, I can type like this, exactly the same thing. Okay, now that I'm importing that, that doesn't end the whole story. Because the div function is part of the calculator file, I need to say calculator.div. So you say dot, you get the div in the Visual Studio Code. So you basically need to call a member of this calculator file from this. So that's how you call it. Now, if you run this, it will show you the output. So if you say 10 2, you get the output. Now, it exactly works fine, the same way it was working. The only difference is that now the whole div definition is residing in another file. Something like this, if you want to do a multiplication or addition, add, and then you just change this symbol to this, and you run this 10 2. So I will get two print this time. One is the print from the div and one is print from the add, but I will not get it. I will only get print from the div. Why? Because I have not yet called the add function. So let's call that from this. So I say this and I call this add function. So that's how you call an addition function, another function. Okay. So you say calculator dot, you get add and div are present in the list. Okay. That's why, because they are part of that file. Now if I run this again, you will find 10 2, and I get two output. One is 5.0 and one is 12. Okay. 5.0 is coming from division and 12 is coming from addition. Okay. So that's why you can call, let's say, a calculator with all different mathematical thing and pass to value and get to see what is the output. So for example, if I say 100 and then I say 50, I'll get 2.0, that is the division, and 150 is the addition. So you get different output. So now I can say exit and it'll be exited. Okay, that's another way of thinking things. Now you have seen that there could be an error for many different things. So for example, if I say a pure string value, it is allowed. Okay, and I get an error saying that it is unable to convert this pure English word into a number. Okay, so it is quite not possible to convert a simple, let's say, alphabetical input into a mathematical numerical number. So what you need to do in this place, you need to do a try catch before you can convert it. So then also you need to handle this kind of exception. So if you encounter these things, you need to make sure that you, let's say, create a separate variable, let's say um, d equals to int x. Now if you say so, there will be an error in case it is a non-number. So I can use this d over here instead of converting it over here. And what I can also do, I can say try converting d into this, else let's say I put d equals to 0 and I try this and I accept d equals to 0. So if somebody is entering a value which is not a number, okay, then it will try to convert it, but it'll throw no error, just making sure that it is handled. So I'll say CLS, and then I run this. Now what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to put my name for X. That's the first one. I have only handled that one. And second one, let's put 2. So you can see that the output is coming because I chose to select 0 as a default value. Now you can give error message and stop giving the input. Okay, you can pretty much do that. So you only do this calculation when the values are correct. So you can put it inside your try block. So which means that when something is correctly done, right, and correctly converted, then only you do the calculation. So if I run it again and say so, I type this and I type this, you will find no input, no output, because the calculation really did not happen. So, and then again, for an end user, there is a confusion why it did not happen. So instead of that, you can say print, we could not do the calculation because the input was not correct. So if I say so, and then I come over here and try to execute this, and I just type this whole thing and put 2, and you get a nice little message saying that, hey, we couldn't do the calculation because the input was not correct. Okay, please try to enter something which is pure number or something like that, which will tell what exactly could be possibly an error. But it's not breaking. You can see that it is still asking me to enter another value. So if I choose to provide the right value, then I get the result. If I choose not to provide the right value, I get an error message, but it never breaks. Okay, and you can just type exit to come out of that. Make sense? Any question? Any doubt? Anything you learned? Something interesting where you can control? Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So because Python, um, when you call a module, so in this case, this is the calculator.py, right? That is a module which is having the definition or div and add. It is first, it needs to be first compiled. Okay. And when you compile, you get this file. And when you can see that PYC is the extension. So it's written using programming language C. The Python is written using C. So you see that it is getting converted into a C code. So if I just open the file, let's see, you can't read it because it's a machine language. Okay, some of the things you can probably read, most of the things you can't read. So it looks like a junk thing, but that's the final form of any Python file, right? So when you um, want to run a Python file, that Python file needs to be converted into a machine language. Okay, that machine language is what you see in the PyCache. Because we are calling this import, the PyCache is getting generated and making this other file compiled. Because we are only calling this from our command prompt. So when I'm calling this, I am not saying py calculator.py. So I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is that I'm calling this one. So it is only compiling this file, but because there is a dependency of the calculator, it also needs to do a Python compilation for this file. And that is what the Python system is doing by reading this import call and converting it automatically and making it ready for the call. So if I, let's say, don't call it, it will not be used, but it will make sure that it is ready with a compiled version, because otherwise you can't read it or execute that code from your programming language. So does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So I think we are we are good for today. I don't want to overwhelm with a lot more information. So we covered quite a lot. So we covered how we can handle an error, how we can handle input, and then how we can separate a large file into multiple files and then call them from one another. So for example, if you have a calculator and then you have multiple mathematical calculation, you can put them into multiple functions and call it from any file. So if today you create another Python file and you want to call the calculator, you can call it. You don't have to bring in the same code again and again into multiple files, and it'll be really duplicated thing, right? So you don't want to do the duplicate thing. So you want to refer wherever possible so that your main code base, that is calculator code base, is really small, but you can leverage it from any file, and that's what we call module. And it's a simple way to call module by just calling the name of the file, and then you can just call the function name by providing the module name dot the function name. And that's what you will see in a lot of Python library. When you refer library, you will find this import keyword going forward. So we'll see that in the upcoming class, how we can import some of the built-in libraries of Python and call it within our function. So with this, I want to end. If you do not have any further question, yeah, okay. Polarco, can you help Sapnil fix this issue? Yeah, yeah. Please connect each other and then help your friend to fix this issue. So, okay. If you still have the issue, you can ask me tomorrow. Any other question? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can. We omit it. That's absolutely. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that is also possible. Any other question from anyone? If there is no other question, maybe we can end today. So tomorrow I kept the class for 45 minutes, okay? And then I will end by, let's say, 11:45, because we just have one section, and I want you to spend time on whatever you are learning, so that you get a bit comfortable and ask me question if you get stuck on anything which you tried um, during your practice. Okay, so you can try fixing during the class also by talking to us, and maybe one of your friend might have done that already, so you can get help from your uh, classmate as well. So with this, thank you very much and have a great day. I wish you all the best. Talk to you tomorrow. Yeah, thank you. Bye. Yeah, you just speak to Bolako, right? If you can just talk to each other and then fix it. Thank you. Thank you so much.